Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Riki Stamps, Director of Programs and Events, and I would like to welcome you to our first July 2020 interview. Today, I'm honored to introduce to you Pat Moore. Pat's been a resident of Butterfield Trail Village since November of 2011. It's an honor to have you here today, Pat. In all the years that I've grown to know you and get to know you, there's one thing I want to make clear before we start this interview. I admire your faith in God, and Pat has her life journey has always included the Lord, and it's just part of what I feel is special with her personality and all of the accomplishments we're going to be visiting here in just a few minutes. But I just wanted to make that a point because I believe that's so much of who you are, Pat, and I'm just so glad to know you and call you friend. For sure.
Thank you.
So I understand that you were born in Memphis, Tennessee, just a stone's throw from here. And I loved Memphis because I went to state school at Arkansas State University, and we had to go across the river to have a little fun. But Memphis, is this wonderful southern capital, and they have a lot of great things going on over there. So tell us a little bit about your parents. And being raised in Memphis, and we'll move on from there.
Okay. Well, my dad was a chemist at Pfizer, and what he used to do is he would take us over to the pharmaceutical company, and then he would have a little vial of something, and he would put another thing in it, and it would make it turn like red or green or all these different colors. So we thought he was a magician. It was really fun.
Yeah.
So, and then my mom stayed at home most of the time, and they were really believed that the unity of mankind, that all people were equal, and that that was a gift of God.
Well, and evidently they instilled that in you and your brothers when you were growing up.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
We went to the Memphis Zoo, and we went on Thursdays. And Thursdays was the day that the maids went, because that was the only day they had off during the week. And so we were the only people there that weren't black. And so my mom always said, we weren't showing off or anything. We were just saying that the unity of mankind, and she really lived that too.
That's awesome. So when you graduated from high school, you enrolled at the University of New Mexico.
Yes,
And I believe you were there a semester and had a transfer to the University of Chicago and were there for a little while, and then you transferred to Memphis State, correct?
Yeah,
And so what was your course of study at Memphis State?
It was history. History, I love that because you're learning about all the peoples of the world. And that always fascinated me because we're so related.
We really are, Pat. That is so true. You had shared with me earlier that your family is of Chickasaw descent.
Yes.
And probably, you knew that, and you probably had family reunions and things like that, but it was never something that was just real forefront for you.
No.
But then tell us what happened when you graduated from Memphis State. Where did you go then?
Well, then I went right out to New Mexico, and then Arizona is where I went. And that was I went to Window Rock, the capital of the Navajo Nation. And we had, the students, then I had the 6th grade. And so the students, what I learned was it was American Indian Day.
Well, hold on just a second. So you went to the University of New Mexico, correct?
That was to get my master's.
To get your master's. But when you moved to Window Rock...
that was before I got my master's.
Okay,
I lived there for about 8 years, and I taught...
Working on the Navajo reservation. Yeah. Okay.
In Window Rock is the capital, so that's where I was teaching. And at that time, the reservation was still, they were getting out of being under the auspices of the state. So that was getting close to where the first time the reservation that Navajo Nation was in charge itself of the school and the schools in the Navajo reservation.
What was the condition of the reservation when you took the job there at first? Were you surprised? I mean, had you ever, well, first of all, what made you want to what made you want to take a job on the reservation?
Well, I've always loved children, and I wanted to teach, and my brother was living in Window Rock. So I just went out to Window Rock and got a job teaching. And then I always loved the children. I've missed the children so much because that's been my whole life. But so I started teaching, and I had the 6th grade. Well, one kind of funny thing was I had cafeteria duty. That's when I first moved out there. And so the kids were taking their trays through and getting food. And then as they went out, they were all throwing their desserts away. And I said,
Really?
I know it, that was just a shock to you too. And I said, well, what's going on here? To another one of the teachers, and they said, well, they've never tasted sugar before, and they just don't like it.
Oh, wow.
So it's an acquired taste. But then the other thing was, when I heard it was American Indian Day, I decided that my students would dress in their traditional dresses or dress, and then we would have a presentation. And so from kindergarten to the 6th grade, the kids were just all in there. It was just great. And so my students came out on the theater, you know, that's in there, and they started singing the songs. I taught them there's a Beauty Way. Did you want to read that one?
Well, you taught this song to the Navajo children.
Yeah.
For a school presentation. Did you do some research, and did you try to find a song and explain why it was important that they sing this song?
Well,
in their native language.
Yeah, what was important was we started singing the song. They all started singing the song, and then people Navajo people that worked at the school, from the dining room into from the offices and everything, started coming in the doors, and they were just looking, and that was because they never heard their language spoken in a school, and that was relevant to earlier. The BIA, or the Bureau of Indian Affairs, had taken children from their homes and their parents, and they put them in BIA schools, and then they cut their hair, and they wouldn't let them speak their language. They wouldn't let them speak Navajo. That was totally against the rules. And cutting the hair the long hair stood for bringing the rain down. So you bring the rain, and that's life itself. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we sang those songs, and I was teaching the kids too out in the audience and stuff. We'd go yippee yippee yeah, yeah. I'd say, okay, you guys, yippee yippee, and they'd all go yippee yippee yeah, yeah. So we did that for the whole time. You know, they copied the songs too. But
so the point of practicing and working on this song was to let the children experience their own native language that they had been forbidden to speak. Yeah. And I'm assuming at that point it didn't matter. You went ahead and did it anyway in the school.
Oh, yeah.
And the parents, and like you said, the workers at the school knew the language because they were speaking it at home and at church and everywhere else, just not in the schools. Yeah. And I have to honestly tell you, I'm sure that was a very emotional day for the people in that school, the adults that worked in that school, and I'm sure it spread like wildfire.
Yeah, very much
these
so.
Kids. Well, I'd like to read the English words to this song, Beauty Way, and then if you would, you share the song in Navajo that you taught those 6th graders.
Okay.
With dew about my feet, excuse me, and please listen to these words in a faith-based content. Yeah. With dew about my feet, may I walk. With beauty may I walk. With beauty before me may I walk. With beauty behind me may I walk. With beauty above me may I walk. With beauty below me may I walk. With beauty all around me may I walk. In old age, wandering on a trail of beauty, lively may I walk. In old age, wandering on a trail of beauty, living again may I walk. It is finished in beauty. It is finished in beauty.
So that's wonderful. And the last part of it, the idea of heaven, walking into heaven, and anyway, it's a beautiful song. Yippee, yippee, ay, ay, yippee, yippee, ay, ay, yippee, yippee, ay, ay, hoya, hey, ay, yippee, yippee, ay, ay, yippee, yippee, ay, ay, yippee, yippee, ay, ay, hoya, hey, ay, yishi, 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 ay, 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 hey, ya, na, hey, ya, na, hey, ya, na, hey, ay, young, hey, ya, na, hey, ya, na, hey, ya, na. Hey, yeah, young, yeshi, 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 hey, yeah.
Lovely, absolutely lovely.
Yeah, the children loved it. It was so much fun because they had learned these words, and then they were presenting it to all of the people that, all of the other Navajos, and there were several other tribes that were there too, that they were going to a Navajo school. But anyway, it was beautiful.
Well, it sounds like you had fun and you brought fun and education to these children. And you didn't really, to me, it's music therapy.
Yes.
And you moved on from music to tell us about this piece right here. I believe, is this wool?
Yeah, this is wool.
Tell us about this.
Sheep wool. Well, Navajos had the sheep and they cut the wool and then they make it into rugs. And so one of the friends had made a little loom for us. And this was this is where the professionals did it. And then starting up this way, it's where my students made the rug. I wanted them to have the experience of making a rug in the school. And that was another connection between their history and the school. So they worked on this, and I love the top part the best because the bottom part is real precise, and the top part is more like humans, where we have different, just like the children, we're not perfect. So that's my little rug story.
Well, most of these students would be in their mid to late 50s now.
Yeah.
Or maybe early
older.
60s.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you had a wonderful influence on many of their lives. You were there 8 years. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
how did they refer to you, Miss Pat, or?
Yeah.
Did they?
And the other thing we had was there was a sign somewhere, and it was in Santa Fe, which is the capital of New Mexico, and it said something about savage Indians. So we read that in the Navajo newspaper, and we decided that we would write letters to the governor of New Mexico saying that, we didn't think that Indians were savage. And so each child wrote a letter, and I wrote a letter, and we sent it to the governor. And we got an answer back. And he was not, he just said, well, that's just the way it is, sort of. And so I told the children, there may be things that you don't like or that you think are unfair, but you can always write a letter to somebody. You can write a letter to the newspaper. You can write a letter to whatever organization that is. So they had the privilege of knowing that they had that power to do that for their own benefit and the benefits of others.
Well, I can't imagine how much they've had to overcome. There's so many races that have had to deal with trials and tribulations in this country, and the Native Americans are no different.
Yeah.
They have endured, truly endured. But the fact that you found the Navajos and they became near and dear to your heart is a true testament of how we should all care for each other. And you've obviously done that. I also want you to talk about this beautiful weaved bowl.
Will remind me to mention about the code talkers.
Yeah.
It's called a wedding basket, and it's all perfect right around here, the same pattern, just like a regular. But the one thing about the marriage basket, the wedding basket, is that they have a place where is it? It's right here, and it's all open. And so during your marriage, after your wedding, whenever things come up, which they always do, you can put them in the basket and talk about them, and then they go out of this area, so you don't have those around your neck anymore. It's gone.
So you fill the basket, and then when you're ready to release it, you just pour them out.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
We all need a basket, ladies and gentlemen. We all need a basket.
That's right.
Love that. Well, and so you showed me a photograph. I'm sorry we don't have it, but there was a wonderful picture of some of the students with Pat in Native costume, regalia, on the reservation, and you pointed out a young lady to me. And tell me about this young lady.
Oh, it was Zonnie Gorman, and her father, his first wife died, so Zonnie was his child from the second wife, and she was in my classroom. And so Carl Gorman, her dad, was a code talker. So, and he was also an artist, and he was pretty famous there. Everybody loved Carl. And then his other son, R.C. Gorman, was a famous painter, famous Navajo painter that did women, making baskets or all kinds of things. And they are really beautiful. If you ever want to look at them, look up R.C. Gorman and Carl Gorman.
Right, and of course, you mentioned R.C. Gorman's father was Carl, who was an original Navajo code talker during World War II. And many of you may have seen the movie Wind Talker, which tells the story from a Hollywood perspective, of course, about the Navajos and how they strongly helped win the war.
Yes.
And I decided after we talked, and you mentioned the granddaughter of the code talker, we would go ahead and show the movie in August. So be watching for Wind Talker on your August schedule, and we'll learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, Pat, I am just so moved by your desire to delve into the Navajo traditions and culture like you have over the years. You've contributed so much, and you've helped grow. You continue to grow. Pat is an artist, and we didn't have any pictures here today because she's given them all to her children, but she is a beautiful painter, and almost every piece that I've seen of yours has the circle that you're talking about and the look and everything. So maybe the next time we have a resident art fair, you can talk Shelby, your son, into bringing those back over, and we'll get to show those off.
That would be good.
That would be good. But thank you for sharing all of that history about your work out west and all the accomplishments you've made that way. So you did receive your master's degree from the University of New Mexico in social work.
Yeah.
And you worked at a psychiatric hospital for a year.
Yeah.
That's about 1 year longer than I could have worked in a psychiatric hospital.
No, it was interesting. The kids that came in had addictions, drugs, alcohol, and a lot of them had been sexually abused also. So I would meet them first when they came in and talk to them. I wanted to get to know them just from the very beginning. And then we set up a group, and the group, they had never really related in relationships, but this group came together. They got to know each other, they trusted each other, they loved each other.
These are all adolescents, right?
Yeah. Adolescents. And so we had one boy that tried to commit suicide, and the kids were they were just brokenhearted. They just cried and talked about it, and how could he have done that? We miss him. We don't. And so when he got out of the hospital again, he came back, and we got him to lay down on the floor, and each one of the adolescents came around and leaned down next to him and said how much they had missed him, how tragic it would have been if they had lost his friendship and himself. And they just talked about that, and everybody started crying. So that really connected them. And the other part of that was we took the kids to AA and Al-Anon groups and Narcotics Anonymous. And it's very helpful. Even if they didn't stay clean and sober, they know where they can go. They know that they're AA, Al-Anon, and NA meetings. So that's always a benefit.
Well, and that is a proof that support groups are essential in so many ways. And for these young people to find empathy and sympathy for this young man who tried to take his life, and they came together, and they were a group, and they cared about each other, and I'm sure that helped all of them through their personal trials and tribulations.
Yeah, it helped me too. It was wonderful. You learn from everybody that you work with, and the children, you learn so much.
So tell us, what in the world brought you to Northwest Arkansas?
Well, a good friend of mine was from Fayetteville, and she had talked about it a lot, and my mom was really ill, and she was over in West Memphis at that time. And so I didn't want to go back to live in Memphis because it was so huge. It had just grown so huge, and that I just didn't want to be in that kind of, environment. So this was a place that I could drive to Memphis without too much trouble. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons I picked here, and because of my friend. And it was beautiful. I loved it.
It's kind of easy to fall in love with Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. It is. So when you moved to Fayetteville, is that when you started your family, or?
No, that was before that.
Before that?
Yeah, because my daughter will be 45 this month.
Okay.
I get all the time stuff mixed up.
Well,
the older I get, the more fractured it seems.
I'm experiencing that myself, Pat. No worries about that at all. But when you moved to Fayetteville from New Mexico, you still wanted to continue teaching, correct?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And where was your first job in Fayetteville?
Well, my first job was at Bates Elementary School, and they don't have the Bates anymore because it's next to the high school, and it was, all amalgamated together. But Bates was called the SED, which stood for Severely Emotionally Disturbed Children. And so what happened with them was that they just couldn't be a part of any classroom. They just couldn't. They were just, and I'm sure a lot of them, the parents had used methamphetamines, and maybe they were really autistic. And so what we did there was I tried to establish a routine because that wasn't part of their life. And so we had a little routine, and I had a helper who was a male, and so he took the boys into the restroom, and I took the girls into the restroom, so he wouldn't have any issues. And I had some toothbrushes donated and some toothpaste. So the first thing we did in the morning was they went in and brushed their teeth, and then I had a couch in the room. It was a big room, and so we all sat on the couch, and I had a rug on the floor, and the rest of them sat on the rug, and we would read a book. We were, parts of a book, till we got to the end of it. And the kids really liked that. They liked sitting up on the couch, and they liked sitting on the floor, and they liked the routineness of knowing that they would come in, they would brush their teeth, and then they would get to hear a story. And so then when the new person came in, it was always a scream. In fact, literally, they would start screaming and yelling, and I would go, you know what, guys? I don't think I can read this story because I really can't hear anything. And the kids would go, shut up, to the new student. And so the kid would just go, because he didn't believe that he was having this, the students, it was peer pressure. So that really worked real well.
I'm sure.
And one of my favorite things that happened was the kids, we had a great big long table, and they started, we had different things that we could do. And one of them, we could do art, so that they could just relax. And every 20 minutes I talked with a different student. So they had a lot of one-on-one. But they just started making this zoo, and it was beautiful. They had little trees that we put in there, little palm trees, and all these little animals. And I mean, they did a beautiful job. And so we decided to have every one of the grades in the school came through, and you would not believe, this was just, it was just, just touched your heart to see that. Each one of them walked around this zoo, and then every grade went around the zoo. And so then when they went out and stuff, they had this presence of being, they were achievers, and they had never had that in their life before. There were always somebody that was in trouble or a problem. So we did a lot of things like that, and it was really fun.
That sounds so interesting. And you just basically continue to help them find a routine, functional routine, to bring normalcy to their life outside of school as much as possible.
Yeah.
And hopefully that did help them in their future years.
Yeah, I think it did.
Growing into adults. So was that at Bates?
Bates Elementary.
But then you went from Bates to Greenland.
Yes,
What was your projects in Greenland?
Well, one of them was, I had the old library. They built a new library. So I had the old one, so I had quite a lot of space. And I always had counselor's aides. I'd have several counselor's aides every period. And one of them was they would work on computers, and they would look up, how to make good grades on the ACT, and they'd talk about it together. When you ever have a group functioning together, you learn a lot more than you do by just sitting there learning by yourself. And so that's what they would do. And one of my students, at the end of the year, she was telling me, well, there was no way that she could go to college, and neither one of her parents had finished high school. And she was living with her grandmother because her father had gone to Vietnam and he wasn't able to take care of PTSD. So she said, well, we can never go. I said, you can go to college. You can go. And she said, well, I can't. We don't have any money and stuff. So we looked on there and got different scholarships. There are all kinds of scholarships. And one of them was for children of a veteran that had PTSD. So she got that money, and then they didn't have a lot of money. So there was a thing called FAFSA, and she got money from the FAFSA. So she finished, after she graduated, I saw her and she said, I've got my degree. And she was just so excited. So that was great. And then the other thing that was really fun was the sixth graders would come over at the end of the year and get to know who the high school kids were, 7th through 12th grade. 12th grade, whoa. And so what we did was, instead of just having the teachers and myself talking to the students, we had 2 kids from every grade, 7th through 12th. And the kids could ask them questions. First, they would talk about what that was like to be in the 7th grade, 8th grade and on up. And then the kids would ask them questions. And one of the questions was, they were asking the 7th graders, did anybody ever stick your head in the toilet? That's what they had learned, that, that when they went to high school, they were going to have all these problems.
Oh, my goodness.
And then they would just look up to the seniors,
Oh, yeah.
They were barely able to ask them any questions because they were so superior. I don't know if you remember that in high school, but...
I remember that in high school. I was petrified to move up
to
senior high school for sure. Oh, gosh. Well, Pat, you have really made such an influence on young people's lives for so many years, and you just love kids. I
Yeah.
mean, that is so obvious. And you have recapped your life and your career in a few moments, but obviously, everything you've done has been from the heart and has been faith-based. And I believe that all of those children have been touched in some form by your presence in their life.
As I was with their, whoops, I keep hitting this.
That's okay.
As I was with being in their lives, and I missed them so much, and they had such a powerful, positive effect on me. Mm-hmm. I was lucky.
Yes, I tell you, you've been blessed, but they certainly have been blessed as well.
Thank you.
I've had Pat as a friend for many years, and I don't know, it was one day, I guess I wasn't having that good of a day, or Pat found out about something, I don't even remember what it was, but she brought me the sweetest note card, and the card was sweet, and it said, "Love, Pat," but then what was inside is still on my wall, and it is a Bible verse that I apply to my life every day, and I want to share that as we close. "The peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds." Simple and so true.
Yeah.
And we should apply that every day, especially when we have troubles in our personal lives, in our health, and just in general. But Pat, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your life with us, and hopefully we'll have an art fair soon, and Miss Pat will bring some of her pieces, and we'll get to look at those as well.
Well, I would say the same thing about Riki. I think she has the heart and pulls everything together for us, and she works so hard, and she brings her heart to every different thing that she does for us, and it's all for us. She is such a wonderful person.
Nice, you're sweet. I know, kudos for me. I am
kudos for
honored to know all the residents of Butterfield Trail Village. And that's why these interviews are so great, because I've built relationships with residents over the last 32 years, and they mean so much to me. And I think that while we all come from different cities and different states and different backgrounds and education, we're a family here at Butterfield, and I think that's something we should always nurture. And this is one way during COVID-19 where we can continue bringing residents' personalities and introducing you to others. So once we can gather again, we all have something to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
and thank you, Riki.
Thank you,
for
Pat.
bringing that to us.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you will join us at the end of the month where we'll be interviewing the ladies of Springdale. Thank you again. Have a great day.